Well, hello and welcome to Transform Tuesday. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I am very pleased to present today Dan Bricklin, who is our Chief Technological Officer or Technology Officer and the creator of TransForm, as well as many other products. Today, Dan is going to be showing you the TransForm programming language, and this is something we talked about in prior sessions, and we did an informal survey last week, and it seemed to be the topic that was garnered the most interest because it allows you to do things with TransForm that you simply can't do today. So rather than me going on and on, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce Dan Bricklin, and he's going to take you on a little tour. If you do have any questions at any point, go ahead and type your questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. And I realize quite a few of the people are going to be seeing this offline as a video recording, in which case, send your questions to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. So let's get started. Hello, Dan, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter.
Okay. There we go.
And there's your screen. I'm looking at an iPhone 6S.
Yes, that is.
All right.
So let me give an introduction to this. What I'm showing you here is not released. It's still in development, but a lot of it works enough for us to be able to show you where we're going. We will start adding little bits of this to the main product for those that need to do some testing with it sometime over in the coming weeks. We've been working on this for some time, but let me give you the reason why we did what we did. It kept coming up that there were a variety of operations that people wanted to do in TransForm that would require a lot of dialogues to customize all the different options that they want. They want to do this and that. Let's say, like people say, I want to be able to do a scan, but once I've scanned for a value, I need to look it up in a database, or I need to go find out what the current, if I'm connected, I need to find out what my current stocking level is, or something like that, or I need to do validation, or I need to take a value and do something with it. There was all sorts of things that that people wanted to do, and we've had a way to do certain things by letting you sort of drop out into JavaScript using the HTML command, but we don't recommend that you do that because there are issues with going out and accessing JavaScript. That's the language that the whole system runs on, because then a person who is creating a form, if they use that facility, they'd be able to basically take over the app, and we don't want to be able to do that unless if you're a allowed by IT to be able to do that. So we're going to start restricting what you can do in the HTML tag to only things that affect the way certain things look on the screen, and not let you be able to get into JavaScript. But we did need to give you a language to be able to do things, and it had to be a language that's integrated with the TransForm system. If we were going to be giving you access to JavaScript, first of all, we would have to try to keep you protected from doing anything really nefarious, and you would have to learn how to use JavaScript in a way that works with TransForm. When we're talking about doing things that can take time and may go out to the internet or go to local databases, and those type of things are complex to do in JavaScript, and it's hard to be able to, unless if you really know what's going on, to be able to integrate this in. So we decided that what we really needed to do to give the form developer the most power is to give them the ability to write in some powerful language, a language that gives them access to the data on the screen, in a form, and be able to affect the data on the form, but also perhaps access some other things, to have tests if then else and some looping, and maybe access to be able to do AJAX callbacks to certain URLs to allow it to access maybe an online database, etc., and to have a language for doing that. So that's what TPL is. TPL is the TransForm programming language that we've produced. We assume that most developers, most people, designers who are designing a form, won't ever need to do this. And if there's something common that people need to do, then we'll probably produce something akin to Action JavaScript, where we'd have Action TPL, where you'd be able to, as a builder of a form, be able to do certain things that would require writing in TPL, but it would automatically produce the TPL for you, which you could then either look at or continue to modify, just like you do with Action JavaScript and Action in Alpha Anywhere. We're not doing that right now, but that's one of the things we know we can do with TPL. The first thing, though, is to make sure that we can do the powerful things that people have been asking for. So I want to show you some of this. This is this is running on my phone, and it's running on a test version of the form filler. But soon, as I say, this will be able to be up on the main form filler. Here, I'm going to take a field value. I'm going to fill out text A, and it says here the value of field A is, and it's blank. But if I tap in here and say Tuesday webinar, let's say. So here it says Tuesday webinar, and it says the value of A is Tuesday webinar. Okay, so I've taken a value and I'm using it over here. And basically what this is that this is this is a normal heading, where the heading has templating. It says use the value of this field, which is field A. So it takes whatever's in field A, and whenever field A changes, you'll see it updated in what you see here. But this just, here's a label text, and it's being modified. Now what we have is, let's take the value of a field, which is B in this case, and let's use an expression. So here it says B is blank, because it's blank. 2 times B is 0, and B factorial is 1. That's B times B, B times B minus 1 times whatever. So it's 5, it'll be 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So if I tap over here, and we see that this is 1, 2 times B is 2, B, do again, do again, do again, you can see it's doing what it's doing. And over here, this field C, every time I modify this, it also updates field C. And finally, this is something you've seen before, which is testing the value of a field. So it says B is equal to 3. As soon as I make it 4, this says B is not equal to 3. So this is something you've been able to do before, but this is showing that it works using TPL as the language for testing. So let me show you a little bit about how this is done. Let's see, what do I want to show you? Let's look at this one over here. No, let's show the other one. When I'm doing the factorial, what I put in here is I've called a function, and the function is a user-written function, and it's written in TPL, and I'll show you, this shows you a little bit of TPL. So using the recursion method for doing factorial. So it says this is a function, and this is the end of the function. And all user functions start with @ sign. That way you won't confuse them with built-in functions, and we can add built-in functions later on without them conflicting with the names that you have. So we're saying that you can pick up argument number 1 to factorial. So you say factorial of a number. Pick that up. If n is less than or equal to 1, then you return 1. Otherwise, you return the value that you've given it, the argument, times the factorial of n minus 1. This is a traditional way of using recursion functions calling themselves to be able to get you a value. And this is what's executed over here for this. That there's a, in here is the, in a template, it says call factorial of the value for b. And this says 2 times b. Okay, so you can use, wherever you want to show some text, you'll be able to use expressions that can either be expressions like 2 times b, or you can call functions that can be very powerful. Let me show you another one. So here, I'm going to tap this to scan. This is just a normal scanner. And let's see, here's book. This book is your typewriter, the history of the machines, and scanned it. Now, it just so happens that this book, along with a handful of others that I happen to have sitting here, I put into a little on-device database so that you saw it go with a little bit of a bluish tint for a while it did the lookup. And in this case, I actually made the lookup artificially take an extra second just so you could see that. And it's put in typewriter, the title, the author, and the book price. So let's see how that's done. Changed ISBN. Let's look at that right there. When the ISBN is changed. So the ISBN is the value of this field. And I'm using this function called dblookup that you give it the name of the table you want to look at, and you say I want ID to be equal to the value of ISBN. I'll show you what that. This pound sign says, unlike the local variables that were used in the factorial, this says I want the field name ISBN. Whatever the value of the field ISBN is, if ID equals that, then return that as an array of objects. And if the value has more than 0 items in the array of returned rows of that, there should only be 1, 0 or 1. Set book title, which is this, book author and book price, to the values that came back from this lookup. Otherwise, say not found in database. And that's all this did. So basically, it's pretty simple code in this case, which is saying, do a lookup in a database, take the rows in that database, and pull the fields out and assign them to something on the screen. Okay. This one, I get to test. Let's use a good AJAX URL. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I am going to decide what country I want. Now, when I tap that, it just went out to the internet and brought back a list of all of the countries in Northwind. And you can see them here. Okay. So it found all the countries in Northwind and populated this list at that point. Okay. With it. Now, if I choose, let's say, like Canada, Now when I go to customer ID, it just went to the database and said, which customer IDs are from somebody in Canada? And here's a list of those in Canada. Let's choose this one. And now you see that it has the name, the ID, and it put together the address as this with a carriage return this with a carriage return this. Let's take a look at that. This is a little more complicated. Okay, so these were when ISBN was changed. This says when the customer ID is changed, do an AJAX of the AJAX URL, and I'm using a good URL here. I can use a bad one and it will fail. And if there's no error, then parse the JSON response, because this responds with JSON in this particular case. That's the Northwind customer table. Start out with the customer name equal not in the database and no address, and then do a nice little for I equals 1 to the length of the number of items in the data. This is pick up a row. If the customer ID is equal to the customer ID that I've put in, then set the customer name to the company name and set the customer address to the address concatenated with the carriage return, concatenated with the city, region, postal code, and country. Otherwise, say lookup failed. For customer ID, whenever I bring the editor up to look at the customer ID, I can set the list, the query list that comes up by calling this, which is this function called company list 2. And company list 2 does an AJAX query out to to that URL and picks up, looks for it, and finds all of the countries. The country filter is all countries, then it's true. Otherwise, it has to be the same as the country filter. And that's how it does that one. And you get the idea that if something is changed, you can say if this value is changed, if that field is changed, then execute this. When an editor is brought up, I can affect things about the editor before the editor is shown on the screen. And so that's showing you the things you can do. So this is pretty powerful. Should I stop at this point, or Dave, I can go on and start showing you the next stuff?
Yeah, just one quick question before you move on, and it would be cool to show some more stuff. And it was just about the syntax of the language. You are using uppercase for ifs and fors.
Oh,
and
yes.
Is that just a technique, or is it actually case sensitive in the language itself?
The variable names are case sensitive. Keywords are not. You can use lowercase for. I'm just using capital because it makes it more obvious for everything
else. Yeah.
But
yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Right. So yeah. So it's not. So the language. Let's see. There will be documentation for the language. And so, for example, the language. There'll be some samples of use, which I right now don't have, but they're all different data types, so that you can have. You can refer to a name. You can have an object value .name. This is kind of like all sorts of languages that use arrays and objects, like JavaScript, for example. If you say object value of name is string, you can do that. So you can use a variable for the field name. And if you say array sub 5, it'll give you the sixth array. It's 0 origin, the sixth one in array. But if you have a string value, if you say string value sub 5, that'll be the sixth character in it. So it lets you do that. It's like some languages like C do that. It's very useful for being able to pick up particular characters. So here's different ways. Now, there's an editing life cycle, and TPL code is executed when you go and load up the form to see it on the screen. You can have placeholders. So you can say, the len of field 1 or something like that to be able to pick up values. You have if tests, just like we've had before in TransForm. There's display expressions, all sorts of places where you can put text. You can also put placeholders. So these are like the list command can ask for its list of items from an array, so you can calculate it at that time. There's also the on editor. Whenever an editor is brought up for a particular field, there's something that's executed. On changed, whenever a form value is changed, you can catch that. There are buttons that you can push, which will cause TPL code to be executed. You have access to the data on the form. You have access to the data in a group. So if you have repeating fields with the data group, you're able to get the particular value for just that data group. And of course, there's other metadata about the field, about the form, such as the person, the user ID, the status, and stuff like that. We have local data, global data, global data. Local data is just within a single function, like you saw for factorial. Global data is throughout the form editing lifecycle, so you can pass values. You can use it at one point and then use it later on. And this is useful where you have a function that executes, for example, on load, and then you've set some values. You've looked up some values that you're going to use later on. And then, of course, there's system data that gives you the current state. And this lets you know where you are in data groups and other information similar to the system data that I talked about up there. The way you specify that is a variable that just says by itself plain names. That's local data. If it has like an up pointing to the top, that would be global data. That's the thing that's used throughout your execution. Form data refers to starting at the top of the form. Group data, pound, means I'm just referring to the current group. And metadata is $, and you have all these things completed. The form ID, form does it have error and stuff. System data gives you all sorts of useful things, where you are in the group path, are there errors, when was the last refresh, there is a variety of things, and there's even some stuff about the screen, etc., which is getting available. Expressions, plus, minus, it's standard type expressions, similar to JavaScript, except that everything pretty much is character. And if you're using arithmetic operations, then it treats the arithmetic things as numbers. If you use string operations like this, then it treats the values as strings. And there's statements. You have assignment statements. You have expressions. You can have, so like here, this is a expression within a call to a variable, to a function. So that's an expression. Assignment statement. You've seen assignment statements. You can have equals, plus equals, minus equals, ampersand equals, meaning concatenate. And then there are keywords: if, else, and else if, for, and then you can have functions and your built-in functions, and there are a wide variety of built-in functions. We're going to probably have at least 100 of them. Right now, they're just, I've implemented a handful of them, but you can see they're useful ones to do some of this stuff. So that's That shows you TPL. So let me go back to here, and let me go back out. Oops, let's go to help and tools for support. And what I've done is I've turned on the debug button. So now I have this little debug button down here. So if I go to debug, tap on debug, I see over here that I have the code, and this is that code that you just looked at. So here's all the code. The last thing that was run was load, which set the global variable rand to a random value and the loaded to the now value. Down here, I can look at local variables, values, there aren't any. Here is the global ones. Oh, loaded was set at this time. Rand was set to this. So each time it comes in, this gets a new value. I can look at the system values, and here's the system values that you can see. And here's all those variables that the values that you saw on the screen before. This is the current. This is the plain. This is the form value. This is the current data group, which, since I'm at the top, is this. And here are the metadata for the form. It's open. It has no filler instance. That's the instance ID, etc. So I can look at this. So this is interesting. So let's try this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to local variables. I'm going to tap this thing underneath called run function, and I'm going to take the reverse A function. Okay, and so now if I look here, there's a little function called reverse A. It reverses the characters in field A. Okay, so it starts with setting a local variable called string, and then it goes through A and picks up, starting with the last, if it's minus, it's from the end. So it picks up the last character, the next to last character, etc. Concatenates them together to create the string. So if I go down here and single step it, you can watch this thing running, and you can see it doing this, creating it. And now I can actually push this, which will run it slowly, and you can actually watch it executing. And when it's all done, it's going to set A. And if we go back here, we see that A now has backwards. And in fact, if I go out, close, and go out here, it's backwards. Go back in here and execute that function. Reverse A. Now I'm going to execute it real quickly. And you see that, oops, I didn't execute it correctly. Here we go. Reverse A, run functions, reverse A. Here we go. And now it's executed it and reversed it again. So this debugging
Excellent.
is useful. Yes?
Oh, no, excellent. I mean, very, very cool. You've shown the language behind it, the documentation behind it, how it works, and that there's even a debugger. It's really a whole complete package
Yes.
that's sort of buried right into this application.
Now, just to quick show you just a couple other things. I've been adding some other stuff here. Here is, I'm starting to add the ability to do, like, tap this, and it says, give an answer, okay or cancel. If I say okay, then I get the result is 1. And yeah, this one, now is the time. It just tests this. There's a warning. Here's 3 buttons. If I push 3, it returns 3. You get the idea. This one here, it puts up a progress, and 5 seconds later, it's going to go away because I have a wait that I'm doing. So therefore, if you have something that takes a long time, you can put up a progress message, etc. Finally, I don't know if you've been following the latest stuff that Selwyn's been adding to the system, but there's a new thing called a manifest where you can download databases SQL databases and files to your mobile device and then access them. So in this case, I've downloaded the SQLite database called Northwind DB, and I can select star from customers. Well, actually, let's do something. Let's select, well, we can select star, that's okay. And where it's UK, if I test SQL, it says, aha, I got a lot of objects back. Well, if I go here and look at it, I can see that the SQL results are, there's my SQL results that I've just gotten from the local database that was downloaded. And I can do all sorts of SQL commands against that. Let's see, so let's do company name. So if I go here and change this to, what is it, it's company. Is a company name lowercase name? This is
Not sure. I
sensitive.
don't remember from Northwinds.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll try it. There we go. And then if we go here to debug, there's company name. Oh, it looks like it doesn't matter.
Oh, great.
Pretty cool, right?
Very, very cool.
So this is to give you an example of where we're going with this. You can imagine how you'll be able to look up a scan in a local database, for example, to find out details about, it could be a database with 100 megabytes of data in it or something, to look up where, for that particular barcode, what's information about it, the name, the location, the type, the last time it was updated. You can use this to populate a what's it called, a data group. So the data groups, you can actually populate something that'll show up basically as a list on the screen that you can interact with, et cetera, et cetera.
That is really cool.
As far as I think I'm going at this point.
That is fantastic, Dan. Thank you very much for showing this today. I know that people here have appreciated it, and I know that we'll have quite a few people also watching this again on video. If anyone does have a question, please send them into guides, GUIDES at alphasoftware.com, and we'd be happy to answer it. Thank you again, Dan, and I hope to see the rest of you next week at the next Transform Tuesday. Take care and goodbye.